All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And Amira and myself, we're going to go into, I guess, different strategies and ways that you can, well, one thing is to be aware that there's actually a conflict happening, because there are times when we're unaware that our partner is angry with us, things like that. But also what are some decent strategies you can deal with those conflicts? And these are conflicts that rise within a relationship, but also within, let's say, a sexual dynamic, the conflicts that rise within the intimacy of a couple. So, yeah, with all that said, Amira, do you have anything you want to kind of mention really quickly, relative to relationship conflicts?
I'll let you start on this one.
Okay.
I would be interested to see where men are at when it comes to conflict resolution, what is going on inside their heads, and then I'll take it from there.
Excellent. All right. So oftentimes, and again, I'm speaking a fair amount from my own sort of experience, but also with the men I've counseled over the years, and the conflicts that generally arise in a relationship, obviously they can be varied. They can be about money, they can be about, and I guess what it's about is not important, because really what it's about is that you can always move towards a resolution, if you can, one, to recognize that there's a conflict in the first place and not avoid it, and two, is if you have a good strategy to deal with the conflict. The saying that cooler heads prevail is very true. And oftentimes we just need a different perspective or a cooler head in order to see how to resolve a conflict. So in the past, what I've noticed is, like, when there's a conflict in a relationship, and if the woman is angry about something, it usually, what ends up happening is one of two things. Usually, one is, this is what I've experienced the most anyway, is the silent treatment, where she just stops talking to me. And this is how, various women I've been with let me know that I've done something. It's not helpful. It's not helpful. It lets me know there's an issue, but it's not helpful. Then the other thing that I've had is women who become vindictive. Or you did this, so I'm going to do it to you. So the tit for a tat approach. And so what I usually, and again, this is how I've dealt with it, is that for me, if I get the silent treatment, I'm just very direct, because I cannot handle the silent treatment for any more than about 5 to 10 minutes, and I go crazy. So for me, I go directly and say, what's wrong? I break it immediately. However, I know a lot of guys, oftentimes they avoid the conflict. So guys are going to do, usually there's 3 different ways to approach this, right? So you've got, if silent treatment comes up, or she does the tit for a tat thing, whatever it is, whatever the conflict is, whatever the subject matter is, how a man responds can go one of 3 ways as I perceive it. One is he's either reactive, meaning yell, scream, and break stuff, right? So yell, scream, break stuff. And the problem is that when somebody's in anger, they're seeing red. You can't reason with this person. You can't communicate with them. And this goes for women too. When women get angry and do their thing, you can't reason with these people. So obviously you can pretty much rule out any conflict resolution as long as the heat is high, as long as the anger is high. So one of the things I would like to talk about in this video is what do we do when the anger starts to simmer down, right? Because oftentimes people need to go through a cycle of expressing their anger. They need to let it out. They need to vent. They need to, like I said, let off some steam.
Blow off some steam.
Yeah. So sometimes that has to happen. So the question is, what do you do after that point? Now, another way in which men will deal with a person's anger in a relationship is they go off and do their own thing. And this is not effective either. So what guys end up doing is, like, I'm going to go to my wood shop, or I'm going to go into the yard and I'm going to go read a book. Guys go into their guy world, and they just want to do what they want to do. And this is real comfortable for dudes to do, because guys like to withdraw often. A lot of guys, they have this whole like, they like to be alone, and women don't always understand this tendency, but guys, a lot of guys need guy time. We need our guy space. But when there's a conflict, that's not guy time. It's not the best time for guy time, right? You don't go into your man den and go, hide away from your woman when she's pissed at you. It's not a good timing. So that's the other way which guys deal with it. And then thirdly is kind of what I do, which I call the sort of just deal with it now, which is be very, very direct. As soon as you see it rise up, well, obviously, again, if she's doing the yelling, screaming, throwing things approach, you can't reason with her.
No.
So for me, I just stay silent until she lets off steam. Then I deal with it directly. But the silent treatment for me, like I said, I immediately and I try to go in and diffuse it. So that's generally what has worked for me, is that, like I said, I just go in silent treatment. I give it a couple minutes, and I could, I'm sensitive to it because I hate the silent treatment. So for me, I have to get rid of it quick, because it makes my life miserable. It really does. It makes my home life, miserable. I like a peaceful home. So for me, if I sense anger, if I sense anything, even if it's not being expressed and they're doing the silent thing, like I want to know what it is. Like, hey, can we talk about this? Let me know. And so the funny thing is that sometimes I'll ask a woman, there's 3 different women I'm thinking of who I've dated at various points, and they gave me the silent treatment, and I asked them, what's wrong? They say nothing. Come on.
You're in deep
You
shit.
mean you're not?
It means you're in deep shit.
Exactly. But why wouldn't they just say, like, yeah, you did this, this, and this, and that bothers me? But instead, nothing. And I'm like, well, that's not honest. But again, she's not ready to tell me. What am I going to do? So usually what I end up doing is I keep badgering them, which irritates them even more. And I don't know that's a good approach either. So I guess in a lot of ways, this video is about, some ways kind of like figuring out all the various angles you need to take and sort of being able to read the room, read the audience before you take one of those angles in terms of dealing with conflict. So yeah. Any thoughts on those, Amira?
Yeah, I'll just put my 5 pennies. Very interesting. Thank you. First, I think when it comes to conflict, everything boils down to your level of consciousness. Where are you at with your level of consciousness? If you are infested with egoic personality, you're not going anywhere, not only in your personal and intimate relationships, in every single relationship in your life. If it's all about me, and it's always the need to be right than the need to be empathetic and understanding, this is not going to take you anywhere, because this shows what level of consciousness you are at. I'm not saying we're not allowed to get angry or frustrated or disappointed, but it's about how you express this, and being, well, of course, being a coach as an intimate, like relationship and intimacy coach, you see things from a wider perspective, and that is not actually very easy when it comes to intimate relationships, because you know that most of the time you are right and the other person is wrong. However, it was not ever easy for me to stop. It takes a lot of restraint on my side to stop the urge of pointing out that I'm right all the time, because it turns out that I'm right all the time. Most of the time I am right. Most of the time I am right. So it takes a lot of restraint to kind of curb my ego and not go down that route to point out that the other person is a complete idiot. So it has to go down the route of, what do I want? You have to ask yourself, where do you want to go with that conflict? What do you want to achieve? Do you want to get closer to the person and just settle this and move on? Or do you want to end the relationship? Or do you want to point out that the other person is wrong and you are right? And, eureka, I've done it, another score. So you need to ask yourself this. And when I find myself going down the route of the ego, that's where your level of awareness comes handy, because you can always use the magic word of, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used this angry language, or I shouldn't have overreacted. Or so it's not like you don't overreact, it's not like you don't get angry, it's not like you don't. However, when I coach people, and I say there should be a threshold that we're never going to cross in our relationships, because sometimes there are stuff that you cannot take back. Foul language, cursing, insulting, violence of any kind, so verbal abuse or physical abuse. These things we cannot take back. So you need to be very conscious about the language you're using when you're angry. So what helped me down the road is seeing my partner as a human being. His role in life is not my partner. At the end of the day, he's a human. So how do I want to treat him as a human in this conflict? Do I have any empathy or compassion or for him as a human? Do I want to really accumulate karma? And now we're talking to really people who are conscious about these terms, like karma, higher level of consciousness. So you need to be like, I am very conscious about accumulating karma. Like I don't wanna like what comes around goes around, kind of like I don't wanna taste that, get a taste of my own medicine. So I try as much as I can to try to be fair to people. However, I would speak my mind, but one of the things that I've learned throughout my work back in Vancouver with the Ministry of Family and Children, which is I worked on many cases of domestic violence, and what we learn and what they teach people is when there is a conflict, and there is, like, I would say, verbal abuse, and before it escalates, leave the room. And if you live in Canada, it's not so easy to ask somebody to leave the space because it's freaking cold outside. So for instance, in most of the apartment buildings, sometimes they have something called a community room. So we would advise people to go and just, go to the community room on your roof or whatever, wherever it is, or just use just a public facility if you cannot, if the weather is really crappy outside, which is most of the time. So that's one thing, is leave the space. If you are in the same house, go to another room till the other person is calm. My experience coaching people also, that I've seen a lot of women become violent, and in that case it takes a lot of restraint from men to not reciprocate that thing, is not to and I beg them, please, with all the with every single will that you have, don't become violent against the woman if she is violent, because that will only, it will end up in a disaster. So yeah, I would say just one of the things is leave the space. If the woman is angry, leave the space, go to the room. It's not about avoiding conflict, period, no, but at this point in time, if the man is angry, go do something else. Go for a walk, go to the balcony, just leave that space where there is a lot of emotional tension. You cannot go anywhere you cannot rationalize with a person when they are super angry. And it goes the same with men. If your woman is angry, leave the space, let her cool down, and then just take it from there.
Yeah. So that kind of brings up something really quickly with this idea of make cooler heads prevail. Oftentimes what's required for cooler heads to prevail is consciousness and awareness. So Amira and I both have designed coaching programs in which Amira, for instance, has a large part of her program focuses on this idea of developing consciousness and awareness within a relationship construct, within, how the energy is exchanged between the two individuals, but keeping in mind that it's always two individuals that are coming together to create that we, which is the relationship itself. My program deals with a lot of sexual energy cultivation. But through the process of cultivating sexual energy, a person becomes more aware of their body, more aware of how energy is ebbing and flowing, the various pressures that build up, et cetera, et cetera. And so again, it's all about awareness, and it's all about, because awareness shines light on things. So in other words, one of the worst things for conflicts is knee-jerk reactions. So something happens and boom, we explode, right? Think about road rage, think about all these sorts of things. And it's really, may cooler heads prevail is, I don't know, that's the motto of the day. This is like one of the most important things. And so going back to this idea of cooler heads prevail also is this idea that there's also nonverbal ways of dealing with conflict. So Amira mentioned one of the options is you leave the space, right? You get out of this person's hair until they calm down. So you will wait for things to calm down. Perhaps then you go back into their presence and you have a conversation, right? But even then, one of the issues is that oftentimes, I'm verbal, but I'm also incredibly moody. There's a lot of times I just, using my intellect doesn't help me. Oftentimes I can talk myself into circles and nothing gets resolved. So one of the things that I've utilized is, like, when I was going through Kundalini Yoga teachers training 25 years ago, whatever it is now, one of the things I learned there was this idea that, hey, we've talked, we can't talk anymore. We keep going in circles. Now what? And so what we learned was, one of the things that you can do is you don't leave the other person's presence at this point, because the emotions may be calmer now, but there's still no clarity on the situation. So the problem is that people are still very sensitive and tender. So when they're still in that sensitive, tender phase, you could reignite that fire. You could reignite that anger quite easily. So one of the things that we learned was, hey, why not sit back to back and breathe? Yeah. You just sit back to back with the person and you breathe. You tune into the feeling of their back expanding as they're inhaling and how it contracts as they're exhaling. And you just breathe 5-10 minutes, whatever it is. This is very, to me, it's very affirming to do this. It says, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here with you. So for me, that soothes things a lot. The breathing brings you into your neutral mind. It brings you into your meditative mind, your neutral space. Then you can have a conversation. But a lot of times, like I said, both individuals need to calm down, find their neutrality, find their meditative mind. Then they can go into having a conversation in order to resolve things. So does that kind of make sense to you, Amira?
I love it. I mean, I love that approach. It's Kriya Yoga, I think, one form of Kriya Yoga. I love that approach, and I use it with my clients, but not when they are in conflict, when they come and they want to connect and they want to bond. And this brings us to the point of, where are you at with your level of consciousness? Are you willing to connect and communicate? And even when you know that the other person may have wronged you, they are the ones to blame, but are you willing to sit and connect and not dodge conflict? So it's all, and also it's about compatibility. Like, for instance, I would love to have that conscious awareness in a partner, where when we have a conflict, they don't want to run away, or, as I said, they don't want to punish me, or I don't feel the urge to punish them by ignoring them or ghosting them, and rather breathe together. That would be fantastic. I mean, but it takes two to tango. So you need that the other partner, like, is not like, no, I'm not breathing with you, I'm going for a smoke. You need another kind of partner for that kind of Kriya. So of course it's lovely. I would love it, definitely, because it kind of like it diffuses the tension and it melts away this emotional this emotional lump that kind of came between you guys. So of course, it's a fantastic approach to resolving conflict, I think.
Yeah. So something else I was kind of, and I think we have enough time in this video, at least to breach the subject a little bit, which is, so those are kind of like general, we'll call like household or general relationship conflict patterns. So when it comes down to like intimacy, like with sexual conflict, like the conflicts that rise in bed, and so the thing is that this is a conflict men are very apprehensive about talking about. And I call it, I call it basic. Well, I use much more profane language. Usually, was what I call this, but we'll call it male genital fragility. So it's oftentimes there'll be a conflict in bed, and so I find conflicts that in bed rise, at least from a male perspective, from multiple areas. One, the partners are not equally yoked. The partners are not on the same page. This person's not in the mood. This person is in the mood, right? So bad timing. But perhaps it's not just this time. Maybe this is chronically. Maybe this person's generally never in the mood. Maybe this person's always in the mood. You know what I mean? So there's those kinds of conflicts. And perhaps that's a whole separate video. Another kind of conflict is me projecting my inadequacies on my partner. So I've dealt with this a lot with men, and it goes back to this male genital fragility, which is I can't get an erection, so it's your fault. I don't know how that works. It's your body. And usually there's some, in those particular cases, when a guy can't get it up with a woman, there could be a number of reasons, a number of things going on. But one of the examples that I can think of is that he's conditioned himself to deal with his ideal environment and ideal situation, which is pornography. So when you're with a real person, all of a sudden it doesn't work. So the immediate knee-jerk impulse is to blame the person, where the reality is he's conditioned himself to respond to sexual stimulus when he wants, looking at what he wants, with the right amount of timing, the right pacing, because he's using his own hand. Okay, so in that regard, he lacks flexibility. So the conflict can rise in those under those situations as well. And I think I have one or two other things. No, actually, those are kind of the areas where I'll kind of like look at it. Premature ejaculation is the one other thing I'll bring up real quick. So dudes who finish up too quick, they're overexcited, boom, discharge. Yeah. Erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation. If it's not related to anything medical, these things can be resolved, but they require you push the reset button on your behaviors.
Absolutely.
Again, you can check out the links down below the video, sexual energy cultivation videos, relationship videos, lots of content, lots of useful information in those programs. But the thing is that it requires a reset button. You can't project your issues on the woman you're with, because again, it's not her fault, right? And if the issue is around attraction, then you have to ask yourself, why are you in the relationship in the first place?
Exactly.
Right. And I've been in those relationships like early in my life. My self-esteem was maybe not fantastic, and I was just happy I was with somebody. There was a time where I was in a relationship for 5 years with a woman I was not attracted to. I liked her as a person. I loved her as a person. I loved the time I spent with her. But when it came to physical stuff, I actually remember going to the bathroom and masturbating before I went to bed so I wouldn't have to have sex, because I wanted to be non-responsive. That was very poor communication skills and very poor conflict resolution skills on my part, as at this time I was like 21 years old. So anyway, those are kind of like bedtime conflicts that come up, at least on the male side of things. In the resolutions, like I said, you always go back to sort of individual work, at least with those particular topics. Self-awareness, recognize that you're projecting your shit on your partner, things like that. So you have any ideas on those?
I actually want to just go back to a very important point that you mentioned about if somebody is in the mood and the other person is not in the mood. And this takes me back again to knowing yourself and knowing your partner, because that saves you a lot of energy, which is knowing if you are sexually wired or sensually wired. And again, if you need more information about this, it will be that, I go into details of every single point in my course. The link is below in the description. But briefly on that is because I get people who come to me all the time. They want to resolve this conflict, and it's not necessarily that only the men who want more sex and the women do not want more sex. No, this is a myth. But I get all kinds of, like, there is incompatibility in the sexual desire, and like, where are they at when it comes to sexual desire. And I created some exercises within my coaching sessions because if you shut down a man several times, then he's going to be shut off. He will shut you off. It doesn't take many times to reject a man. They are very fragile, and their egos are very fragile. And exactly as Akal said, around their genitalia, so and sexuality and stuff. So it doesn't take too many attempts. If you keep saying no, then he will shut you off permanently. He will feel rejected, and then he will suppress his sexual desire against you. And that is why I created some nonverbal exercises for couples to test each other's desire and readiness to have intimacy and sex without really verbalizing, so you don't hurt his ego. And even when you say no, whether it's a man or a woman, also women are very fragile. Like, it's not easy for a woman to go and approach the man, and then he says, no, I'm not in the mood. It's not easy. It's not easy to be rejected, even if he's your man, if he's your husband, if he's whatever it is. If you have a contract signed, but it's not a contract when it comes to desire and attraction, and women would feel really like hurt also if they get rejected all the time by their partner. So it goes both ways. That's why I created some exercises, but this is in my sessions for couples to test each other without really saying something straightforward. So knowing if your partner is sexual in nature or sensual in nature makes you avoid a lot of conflict, because then you would know. For instance, for example, if I am a very energetic, sensual, over the top, like the music has to be right, the ambience has to be right, there has to be nice candles, there has to be like nice smells, incense, whatever. I create the mood, for the whole thing. So if something is off, then I easily can be put off the mood of sex. But if your partner is like, if let's say your woman she's not sensual, she's actually sexual. So if she wants sex, she just wants penetration, period, and she wants it done now, because otherwise she will become cranky. So, and if you are on the opposite side, if you just need some time, you need to relax, you need to get in the mood, and then you reject her, and you don't understand what is the problem. Like, maybe 5 hours later you'll be in the mood, maybe tomorrow you will be in the mood, but no, you need to understand where your partner is at. And if you are in the mood, but you don't know that, for instance, it's important for her that the right music, the right, like mood, she cannot do it in a barn, she cannot do it in a back seat of a car most of the time. Yeah, maybe it can happen as an adventure sometimes, but that saves you a lot, because then you understand, and these preferences can change. However, from my experience personally, and most of the people that I coached, these preferences do not change that often. The odds would be, sometimes they would go for something more kinky, more adventurous, like maybe a public space or a public place, just to kind of spice things up. But they would stick to their blueprint. The blueprint would be, if she's sexual, I want it, and I want it now. If she's sensual, or if he is sensual, then he wants a massage, he wants you to wear some lingerie, he wants some, maybe a nice smooth conversation to kind of lubricate the situation before you get into the the sex. So
Yeah.
so
Well,
it helps.
yeah. So just to jump in really quick, I think the underlining message here is that men need to understand they're men, women need to understand they're women, and they're fundamentally different in terms of readiness for sex. I mean, so for instance, what I would ask a man, whether the woman falls under the sexual or the sensual category, in terms of like her tendencies, it still takes more time than what a guy does. Usually what a guy does is, I feel horny, he drops his pants, puts on some porn, beats his business, finishes, done. That approach is not going to work most of the time for women. Like, hey, if you've been out dancing, you've been at the club and you're drinking, yeah, you can have that quickie really quick because you just had all that foreplay, which was dancing. Yeah. So the reality is that you can't come home from work, dude, and like go, I want sex, and like, I don't know, do nothing to warm her up. Even if she's the sexual type, you got to put her mind into sex somehow. And you being like dominant and just saying, taking what you want, well, that's not going to work. And so if that's frustrating you, dude, then what you need to do is you need to realize that it's a relationship. There's an exchange. And again, like if you want to be a better guy, you want to have better interactions. If you want to, enjoy your sex more, et cetera, you're going to have to change the approach. And again, she'll deeply appreciate you changing your approach, and there will be rewards if you do so. And that's what I keep thinking is that time and time again, I think men wish women were like men sometimes, and it's, I remember there was one woman I dated, she said this, which was quite interesting. So you're gonna have to excuse my language here. She said she was frustrated because men want women to both be a whore and pure at the same time.
Yeah.
And the issue with that is that, yeah, we want her to be all ripe and ready, and open to whatever shit that pops into our mind. But at the same time, we don't want her to cheat on us. We want her to be pure. We want her to be kind and sweet and like all these, I guess, stereotypical sort of like, female things. We want her to be virgin, like whatever it is. Well, you can't have both, right? So the reality is you have to take away all the sort of generalizations, all the sort of things that you want and things that you desire. You have to put all those aside and recognize the audience. The audience in this case, if you're a guy, is her. Where is she at? Slow your roll, slow your progression, and again, if she's the sensual type, as Mira described, she may need some body work, may need some touch. She may need time to get into her body. And if she's the sexual type, may not need that much time, but she still is going to need to change her point of reference from whatever she's been looking at and doing to the sex stuff. Because for men, the thing is that sexual energy is a primary driver. For women, it is not. Women need to be reminded of their sex in some ways, but then they can go into it amazingly deep. But again, like guys, we're walking around that charge all the time, so it's a different thing. So anyway, yeah.
Sometimes she can meet you where you're at. Sometimes you can meet you where you're at. Like for instance, like if you're horny, you want to come home, you want to have sex, just text her. Like 1 hour before, just start flirting with her. Start saying, I miss you, I love you, when I get you, I want to do that to you, I want you to wear this, I've been fantasizing about you all day. She will be on fire by the time you walk in. But you have to do some work, man, because I don't understand why do people think that they have to put effort in their businesses, in their workouts, in their sports, in their passions, but things will magically work in their relationships? Why everything needs effort, work? It's not bad, it's enjoyable, it's joyous, because it's the journey and not the destination that makes the difference. But just get it into your head. You know, if you need to learn how to sail, you take courses, you practice your ass off, you go in a windy weather, rain or shine. So it's the same with relationships. If you want to take your relationships to the next level and not have a relationship only with your hand, then you need to do some effort, man. So yeah, that's what it is.
Definitely true. All right. So, yeah, any kind of final thoughts on this sort of, I guess, conflict resolution, either in bedtime situations or just around the household kind of thing?
I think the most important thing is to remember that this person lying next to you, this person sharing your household, their identity and their personality and their whole existence does not resolve around you. They are humans. They need to be respected. You need to have some empathy and compassion for them, regardless of the fact that they are your current partner. It's not the only thing. You have to get out of your ego and treat them with love and empathy and compassion and respect. And that's a game changer in relationships.
Definitely. And I think one other thing I kind of want to just really mention real quick is, and this is this is more just a quick comment, which is in the modern day where we have technology, cell phones and dating apps and things of this nature. And I think most of you who are watching this video probably know this. Texting is a really bad way to resolve conflicts of any kind.
Horrible.
Don't resolve conflicts over text.
Don't do it.
No, because you obviously, and again, I'm going to state the obvious. There's no body language. You can't interpret body language. You can't interpret tone. And I don't care how many emojis you use. There's so much lost. So got to go old school, got to make a phone call. If you can't talk to the person in person, you're going to have to dial the number and say something. Texting is really bad, really bad. And if you're going to break up with someone, also don't do the coward's path. Call them, talk to them, give them an explanation. Because always remember that that's another human being. And if we're going to play the spiritual angle here, you're creating all sorts of negative karma by manipulating someone emotionally in a negative way. And the circle, everything is circular in the universe. It'll come back to you at some point. So
karma is a bitch. I always say karma is a bitch. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So any final thoughts, or we all wrap it up now?
I think we just gotta wrap it up, man.
Cool.
We give a lot of food for thought here for the people to ponder on for now.
Absolutely. All right, very good. So, well, thank you everyone for watching, and we appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Akal, and thank you for tuning in. Okay, see you again. Bye for now.